Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Andrew Tate. Welcome to another tape in my subliminal series. This is the truth no one wants to tell you. Life doesn't care about your feelings. The world moves forward whether you're happy, sad, angry, or frustrated. If you let emotions dictate your actions, you will never be in control. You'll be a puppet reacting to everything instead of making things happen. Weak people let emotions rule them. They get angry and lash out. They feel sad and give up. They feel fear and never take action. Strong men, real men, use their emotions as fuel. You think champions don't feel fear? Of course they do. But they master it. They channel it into power. Discipline beats emotion every time. When you feel tired, weak, or demotivated, you do what needs to be done anyway. That's control. That's power. You don't cry about problems, you solve them. You don't waste energy on anger, you turn it into drive. The world belongs to those who control themselves. If you let emotions run wild, you'll never be successful, never be respected, never be free. So ask yourself, do you control your emotions or do they control you? Because that answer determines everything. Emotions are a double-edged sword. They can either elevate you to greatness or drag you down into mediocrity. The problem is that most people let emotions dictate their lives instead of using them as tools. They react instead of strategizing. They allow feelings to control their decisions, their actions, and ultimately, their destiny. This is why they fail. This is why they remain stuck, unable to break free from the cycle of weakness and self-doubt. When something bad happens, the average person immediately reacts. Anger, frustration, sadness. These emotions take over, clouding their judgment and forcing them into decisions that only make things worse. Instead of stepping back and analyzing the situation with a clear mind, they let their emotions dictate their response. And that response is usually weak, impulsive, and destructive. Successful people understand that emotions are nothing more than signals. They recognize anger as a sign that something needs to be fixed. They recognize fear as an indicator that they are stepping outside of their comfort zone. But instead of allowing these emotions to take over, they control them. They use anger to fuel their drive. They use fear as a motivator to push harder. They take emotions and bend them to their will, turning them into weapons rather than weaknesses. Most people are slaves to their emotions because they have never trained themselves to think logically in emotional situations. It's easy to make a smart decision when everything is calm. But what happens when things get tough? What happens when you're in a high-pressure situation and emotions are screaming at you to act irrationally? This is where most people fail. They let emotions overpower them, making choices they later regret. The key to true power is being able to think clearly, even when emotions are at their peak. The reason weak people stay weak is because they justify their emotional reactions. They convince themselves that their anger was warranted, that their sadness was unavoidable, that their fear was just who they are. They use emotions as an excuse instead of as a tool. The strong don't do this. The strong recognize emotions for what they are, temporary impulses that can either be controlled or allowed to take control. And they always choose control. Imagine a man who lets his emotions dictate his decisions. He gets angry at small things, lashes out at people, and ruins relationships. He lets fear stop him from taking risks, missing opportunities that could have changed his life. He allows sadness to consume him, making him weak and unproductive. Now imagine a man who understands that emotions are tests. Instead of lashing out in anger, he remains calm, making calculated moves. Instead of allowing fear to paralyze him, he pushes forward, knowing that growth comes from discomfort. Instead of wallowing in sadness, he gets up and keeps moving, refusing to be defeated. One man remains controlled by emotions. The other controls them. The difference in their lives is massive. Emotional control is what separates the powerful from the powerless. The world is full of people who let emotions destroy them. They get offended easily. They break down when things don't go their way. And they constantly make impulsive decisions that lead to failure. And then they wonder why they're stuck, why they can't seem to get ahead, why success always seems out of reach. It's because they never learned to master themselves. The harsh truth is that emotions will never go away. No matter how strong you become, no matter how disciplined you are, emotions will always be there. You will always feel anger, fear, sadness, frustration. But the difference between a weak man and a strong man is what he does with those emotions. The weak man lets them dictate his life. The strong man acknowledges them but does not obey them. He remains in control, always. People think emotional intelligence is about being in touch with your feelings. That's nonsense. Emotional intelligence is about being able to recognize an emotion, understand its purpose, and then decide whether or not it deserves a reaction. Most of the time, it doesn't. Most emotions are just temporary impulses trying to trick you into making a mistake. And if you can train yourself to pause, to analyze, to remain in control, instead of reacting blindly, you become untouchable. There will be moments in life where emotions hit you harder than you expected. You will face betrayal, failure, and setbacks. In those moments, emotions will try to take over. They will scream at you to react. They will tell you to quit, to get angry, to lash out, to give up. Most people listen. That's why most people fail. But the strong recognize these moments as the ultimate test. They understand that true power comes from remaining in control even when everything around them is chaotic. When you control your emotions, you control your life. Nothing can shake you, nothing can break you, and nothing can stop you. But if you let emotions control you, you become weak, unstable, and vulnerable. The choice is always yours. Discipline is what separates winners from losers. The average person goes through life based on how they feel in the moment. If they feel motivated, they take action. If they feel tired, they rest. If they feel discouraged, they quit. Their emotions dictate everything they do, which is why they never reach their full potential. The truth is, feelings are unreliable. They change constantly, and if you allow them to control your decisions, you will never achieve anything worthwhile. A man who relies on motivation is a man who will always struggle. Some days, you wake up feeling unstoppable. Other days, you wake up feeling like doing nothing. If your actions depend on whether or not you feel like it, you will always be inconsistent. And inconsistency is the enemy of success. This is why the weak remain weak. They wait for the right mood, the right moment, the right feeling, instead of taking action regardless of how they feel. The strongest men in the world understand that feelings don't matter. What matters is what you do, even when you don't feel like doing it. People love to talk about motivation, but motivation is useless. It comes and goes like the wind. It's easy to work hard when you're inspired, but what about when you're not? What about when everything is going wrong, when you're exhausted, when the results aren't showing? This is where discipline comes in. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, no matter how you feel. It is waking up and getting to work even when you're tired. It is going to the gym, even when you don't feel like it. It is pushing forward even when your emotions tell you to stop. Most people will never develop true discipline because they are too soft. They allow themselves too many excuses. They say, I'm not in the mood today, or I deserve a break, or I'll start tomorrow. They give in to their emotions because it's easier than fighting them. But every time you give in to weakness, you reinforce it. Every time you let feelings dictate your actions, you make it harder to take control in the future. The more you obey your emotions, the weaker you become. The more you obey discipline, the stronger you become. There is a reason why only a small percentage of people ever achieve real success. It's not because they were born different. It's not because they got lucky. It's because they learned to master themselves. They train their minds to act no matter what. They don't wait to feel like working, they just work. They don't wait to feel like training, they just train. They don't wait for the perfect moment, they create it. This is what discipline is. It is the ability to take control over your mind and body instead of letting them control you. The people who live at the top, the ones who dominate in business, fitness, and life, all have one thing in common. They do what needs to be done every single day without fail. They don't care if they're tired, stressed, or uninspired. They push through anyway because they understand that every action, every repetition, every disciplined decision compounds over time. Success is not built in one day. It is built through thousands of disciplined days stacked on top of each other. And the moment you break that discipline, the moment you start listening to your emotions instead of your mission, you begin to lose. Weak men live their lives on autopilot, controlled by whatever feeling is strongest in the moment. They wake up and decide what to do based on how they feel. Strong men wake up and do what needs to be done regardless of feelings. This is the fundamental difference between those who achieve and those who don't. The moment you allow discipline to take over, your emotions become irrelevant. It no longer matters if you feel like working or not. You just do it. It no longer matters if you're motivated. You just take action. This is the mindset that builds champions. Society encourages weakness. It tells you to listen to your feelings, to be kind to yourself, to take breaks whenever you feel overwhelmed. This is why so many people who remain average. They indulge in temporary comfort instead of embracing the discomfort that leads to greatness. They tell themselves they are being kind to themselves, but in reality, they are just avoiding discipline. And every time they avoid discipline, they stay exactly where they are. Every great man in history has been a man of discipline. The warriors, the leaders, the kings, they all understood that success comes from doing what must be done, even when it's difficult. They didn't make excuses. They didn't rely on motivation. They relied on unshakable discipline. The man who lives by discipline is unstoppable because he is not controlled by emotions. He does not bend to weakness. He does not wait for inspiration. He simply executes every single day. Fear is the greatest barrier between you and the life you want. It is the invisible force that stops people from taking risks, making bold moves, and chasing success with full force. Most people live their entire lives under its control, never realizing that fear is not meant to stop them. It is meant to them. It is meant to be used as fuel. The problem is that weak people misinterpret fear. They see it as a sign to back down, to hesitate, to retreat. But fear is not a wall, it is a test. It exists to see who is worthy of success and who will crumble under pressure. Every successful man has felt fear. It is impossible to be ambitious and not feel it. The difference between winners and losers is what they do when fear arrives. The loser stops. He lets fear dictate his decisions. He justifies inaction with excuses, convincing himself that it is not the right time, that he is not ready, that he will try later. But later never comes. He spends his life waiting, paralyzed by a feeling that exists only in his mind. The winner, on the other hand, understands that fear is a signal. It means he is stepping into new territory, into a place where growth happens. Instead of avoiding it, he embraces it. He understands that fear is not an obstacle, but a doorway to power. The reason most people are stuck in the same position year after year is because they have conditioned themselves to avoid fear. They take the safe route, make comfortable choices, and never push beyond what they already know. They convince themselves that this is the logical way to live, that it is smart to avoid risk. But in reality, they are simply afraid. Afraid of failure, afraid of judgment, afraid of discomfort. And in their attempt to avoid fear, they also avoid growth. They remain the same, trapped in a cycle of mediocrity because they never had the courage to break free. The strongest men in the world are not fearless. That is a lie. They feel fear like everyone else. The difference is that they have trained themselves to act anyway. They do not wait until fear disappears because it never will. They move forward despite it. They have learned to take the fear that stops most people and transform it into fuel. They use it as motivation, as a driving force to push harder, move faster, and accomplish more. The moment you stop running from fear and start using it to your advantage, you become unstoppable. Fear is the reason most people never take the first step. They talk about their dreams, their ambitions, their goals, but they never take real action. They want to start a business, but they are afraid of failure. They want to change their body, but they are afraid of the effort it will take. They want to become great, but they are afraid of what people will say. So they do nothing. They sit and watch as life passes them by, always wondering what could have been if only they had been brave enough to act. The truth is that fear never really goes away. No matter how strong you become, no matter how much you achieve, there will always be new fears waiting for you at the next level. This is why it is crucial to learn how to handle fear early. If you spend your life waiting for fear to disappear before you take action, you will never move forward. The key is to reprogram your mind. Instead of seeing fear as a stop sign, see it as a green light. Understand that if something scares you, it is usually a sign that you are on the right path. Weak men avoid fear, strong men chase it. The greatest opportunities in life exist on the other side of fear. Every major breakthrough, every moment of transformation, every step toward greatness requires facing fear head on. When you run toward fear instead of away from it, you gain power over it. You prove to yourself that it has no real control over you. The more you do this, the more fearless you become. Not because fear disappears, but because you learn that it is nothing more than an illusion. Society teaches people to be comfortable. It tells them to play it safe, to avoid taking risks, to seek security. This is why most people never achieve anything remarkable. They have been programmed to fear failure, to fear discomfort, to fear stepping outside the norm. But comfort is the enemy of progress. If you are not afraid, you are not growing. If you are not facing fear on a regular basis, you are not pushing hard enough. Every great man in history has faced fear, and every great man in history has conquered it. The difference between success and failure is not talent, not intelligence, not luck. It is courage. The courage to act when others hesitate. The courage to take risks when others play it safe. The courage to move forward even when fear is screaming at you to stop. This is what separates the strong from the weak, the winners from the losers. Fear is always present, but so is the choice. You can let it control you, or you can take control of it. Anger is one of the most powerful emotions a man can experience. It has the potential to destroy everything in its path, to make people act irrationally, and to push them toward self-destruction. But anger, when controlled and redirected, is also one of the most powerful sources of energy a man can possess. The problem is that most people don't know how to handle it. They either suppress it and allow it to eat away at them, or they let it explode and cause damage they can't take back. Both approaches are weak. The real power comes from mastering anger, using it as fuel instead of letting it burn everything to the ground. Weak men allow anger to control them. They lash out without thinking, say things they regret, and make impulsive decisions that ruin their relationships, their reputations, and their futures. They let anger turn them into fools, slaves to their emotions, incapable of rational thought. These are the men who end up fighting battles they never needed to fight, creating problems where there were none, and losing everything over a moment of uncontrolled rage. They tell themselves that they have a temper, that this is just who they are, as if that justifies their lack of self-control. But in reality, they are simply weak. A man who cannot control his own emotions is a man who will always be controlled by others. On the other hand, suppressing anger is just as dangerous. Many people are taught from a young age that anger is bad, that it should be avoided, that it should be buried deep down and ignored. This is a mistake. Suppressed anger doesn't go away. It builds up, turning into resentment, bitterness, and frustration. It eats away at a person from the inside, making them weak, passive, and depressed. Instead of using anger to drive them forward, they allow it to consume them, draining their energy and motivation. A man who buries his anger is a man who has no fight left in him. He becomes docile, submissive, and easily controlled. The strongest men in the world have learned how to channel their anger into productive action. They do not let it control them, nor do they suppress it. Instead, they use. Anger is energy, pure and raw, and when directed correctly, it becomes an unstoppable force. It becomes the fuel that pushes a man to work harder, to train longer, to fight smarter. It becomes the driving force behind success. When a man learns to use his anger instead of letting it use him, he becomes dangerous in the best possible way. He becomes disciplined, calculated, and relentless. Two men, both of whom experience the same level of anger. One of them allows it to take over. He lashes out, screams, breaks things, and ultimately accomplishes nothing. His anger controls him, and he is left with nothing but regret. The other man feels the same anger, but refuses to let it consume him. Instead of reacting, he channels it into his work, his training, his goals. He lets it drive him forward, using it to push past pain, past fatigue, past obstacles. One man is weak, the other is strong. The difference is control. Society discourages men from embracing their anger. It tells them to calm down, to relax, to let things go. But great men do not simply let things go. They take that fire and turn it into something meaningful. They don't waste energy on petty fights or meaningless arguments, but when they are wronged, when they are challenged, when they are underestimated, they do not back down. They take that anger and use it as motivation to prove everyone wrong. They use it as the fuel to outwork, outthink, and outperform everyone around them. A man who knows how to use his anger is a man who cannot be stopped. He does not waste time complaining, arguing, or seeking revenge in meaningless ways. He takes every insult, every setback, every moment of disrespect, and he turns it into power. He becomes focused, disciplined, and determined. While others waste their energy on emotional outbursts, he channels his energy into results. He lets success be his answer. He lets his accomplishments speak for themselves. He does not need to scream, threaten, or lash out. He simply wins. Weak men break under anger. They let it control them, making reckless decisions that lead to failure. Or they suppress it, allowing it to fester until it drains them of all power. But strong men recognize anger for what it is, pure energy that can be shaped, controlled, and directed toward a purpose. They do not waste it. They harness it. They use it as the fire that keeps them moving forward when others quit. They use it as a weapon, not against others, but against weakness, against failure, against anything standing in their way. The world belongs to those who can master themselves. And mastering anger is one of the most important skills a man can develop. It is the difference between being a slave to emotion and being a man in complete control. It is the difference between destruction and domination. It is the difference between losing and winning. Weakness is a disease, and like any disease, it spreads if you allow it. The world is filled with people who embrace weakness, who justify it, who live their entire lives making excuses for why they are not where they want to be. They complain, they blame others, and they accept mediocrity as if it were their destiny. But the truth is, weakness is a choice. No man is born weak. Weakness is something that is built, piece by piece, through bad habits, through laziness, through a refusal to push beyond comfort. And once it takes hold, it is hard to escape. It controls everything. A man's thoughts, his actions, his future. A weak man is a slave to his emotions. He allows fear to stop him, anger to control him, and doubt to paralyze him. He hesitates when he should act. He complains when he should be working, and he seeks comfort instead of challenge. He does not strive for greatness because he has convinced himself that it is out of reach. Instead, he settles for whatever life gives him, never questioning whether he could have more. He looks at men who are stronger, more successful, more disciplined, and instead of learning from them, he resents them. He tells himself that they are lucky, that they had advantages he didn't have, that life is unfair. But all of this is just an excuse to avoid the painful truth that he is weak because he allowed himself to be. Strength is built through struggle. It is built by doing the hard things, by pushing past limits, by refusing to give in when things get difficult. The strongest men in the world were not born that way. They were forged in fire, tested by pain, and hardened by experience. They embraced discomfort, knowing that suffering is the price of greatness. They did not run from hardship. They ran toward it because they understood that every challenge, every failure, every setback was another step toward becoming stronger. The difference between the weak and the strong is simple. Weak men avoid struggle. Strong men embrace it. Comfort is the enemy of progress. The moment a man becomes comfortable, he stops growing. He settles into routine, avoids risk, and becomes stagnant. Society encourages this. It tells men to seek balance, to relax, to take it easy. It feeds them distractions, entertainment, junk food, mindless pleasures, all designed to keep them weak. A man who is distracted is a man who is not dangerous, and the world does not want dangerous men. It wants obedient, weak men who do as they are told, who never challenge the system, who never rise above their station. The moment a man realizes this, he has a choice. He can continue to live as a slave to comfort, or he can reject it and take control of his own destiny. Discipline is the cure for weakness. It is the weapon that destroys excuses, that forces a man to act even when he doesn't feel like it. A disciplined man does not wait for motivation. He does what needs to be done, no matter what. He wakes up early, he trains hard, he works relentlessly, and he never allows emotions to dictate his actions. He understands that true freedom comes from control, the control of his mind, his body, his actions. A weak man is controlled by everything around him, his feelings, his desires, his environment. A strong man controls everything within him. That is the difference. Weakness is not just about the body. It is about the mind. A man can be physically strong, but mentally weak, and that is just as dangerous. A weak mind gives up at the first sign of difficulty. A weak mind crumbles under pressure. A weak mind looks for the easy way out, the shortcut, the path of least resistance. But there are no shortcuts to success. There is only hard work, sacrifice, and relentless effort. A strong mind understands this. A strong mind does not seek the easy way. It seeks the right way, even if it is the hardest. Most people will never escape weakness because they are not willing to suffer. They want results without effort, success without struggle, rewards without sacrifice. But this is not how life works. Everything worth having requires pain. The body is built through pain. The mind is sharpened through struggle. The soul is strengthened through hardship. The moment a man understands this, he stops avoiding pain and starts embracing it. He stops making excuses and starts taking action. He stops thinking like a victim and starts thinking like a winner. A weak man always looks for someone to save him. He waits for the perfect opportunity, the right time, the ideal circumstances. But the strong man knows that no one is coming to save him. No one will hand him success. No one will give him power. No one will build his empire for him. He understands that everything he wants must be taken through force, through work, through discipline. He does not wait. He acts. He does not beg. He earns. He does not complain. He dominates. This is the mindset that separates the weak from the strong. This is the mindset that builds champions. Control is everything. A man who does not have control over his mind, his actions, and his emotions is a man who will always be at the mercy of the world. He will be pushed around by circumstances, manipulated by others, and trapped by his own weaknesses. He will live his life reacting instead of acting, following instead of leading, existing instead of thriving. Control is the foundation of power. Without it, a man is nothing. With it, he is unstoppable. Most people live their lives completely out of control. They let their emotions dictate their actions, allowing anger, fear, sadness, or frustration to determine how they respond to challenges. They react impulsively, without thinking, making decisions based on temporary feelings instead of logic and strategy. They become slaves to their moods, unable to stay disciplined because they only do things when they feel like it. They let other people provoke them, control them, and dictate how they move through life. They are weak because they have never learned the most important skill a man can develop, self-control. A man in control is a man who cannot be broken. No matter what happens, no matter what challenges arise, he remains steady. He does not panic. He does not act on impulse. He does not let outside forces determine his fate. He moves with precision, with intention, with purpose. His actions are calculated. His emotions are mastered. And his focus is unshakable. While others are consumed by drama, by distractions, by meaningless conflicts, he stays locked in on his mission. He does not waste time on things that do not serve him. He does not allow himself to be provoked by the weak. He remains in control always. Control is not something that comes naturally. It must be trained, developed, and strengthened every single day. It requires discipline, patience, and relentless effort. Most men never develop it because they are too weak to do what is necessary. They indulge in every temptation. They give in to every craving. They allow themselves to be distracted by things that have no value, seeking cheap dopamine hits instead of building something real. They eat garbage, poison their bodies with substances, and avoid hard work because it is uncomfortable. They let every minor inconvenience throw them off course, reacting emotionally instead of responding strategically. This is why they remain powerless. A man who has control over himself has control over his destiny. He does not allow the world to dictate his path. He creates his own path, carving his way forward through sheer willpower and discipline. He does not waste time complaining about things he cannot change. He focuses on what he can control, his mindset, his work ethic, his discipline, his habits. He understands that every choice he makes either makes him stronger or weaker, and he chooses strength every time. Most people fear discipline because it is difficult. They would rather take the easy road, the path of least resistance, the comfortable way. But control and comfort cannot coexist. A man who seeks comfort will always be weak because comfort breeds laziness, softness, and stagnation. True power comes from the ability to do what needs to be done, regardless of how difficult or uncomfortable it may be. The strongest men in the world are the ones who have mastered themselves, who have trained their minds to override emotions, who have built the discipline to act with precision no matter how they feel. The world is designed to break weak men. Every distraction, every temptation, every system in place is designed to keep men weak, passive, and controllable. The media feeds them lies, the food they eat destroys their bodies, and the entertainment they consume keeps them numb. Most men do not even realize they are being controlled because they have never experienced real discipline, real focus, real power. They are too busy chasing pleasure, avoiding pain, and seeking validation from people who do not matter. A man who is truly in control rejects all of this. He does not need external validation. He does not need distractions. He does not need anyone to tell him what to do. He moves through life with purpose, with clarity, with strength. Control is not about suppressing emotions. It is about mastering them. A weak man lets his emotions dictate his life, allowing anger to make him reckless, fear to make him hesitant, and sadness to make him unproductive. A strong man feels everything, but is ruled by nothing. He can experience anger without losing his temper, feel fear without backing down, and endure sadness without becoming weak. He understands that emotions are tools, not obstacles. He uses them to his advantage, turning pain into power, fear into motivation, and frustration into discipline. A man in control is respected. People recognize his strength, his presence, his ability to remain calm and collected in any situation. They know that he cannot be easily shaken, that he is not controlled by his urges or by external forces. He stands out in a world full of weak men because true control is rare. The majority of people are weak because they refuse to take responsibility for themselves. They blame others for their failures, their lack of success, their inability to achieve their goals. But a man in control knows that everything in his life is a result of his own choices. He does not make excuses. He does not point fingers. He does not play the victim. He takes full responsibility for his actions, his results, his future. In conclusion, the moment a man decides to take control of himself is the moment he becomes powerful. He stops reacting and starts acting. He stops waiting and starts creating. He stops being a slave to his emotions and starts using them to his advantage. He stops making excuses and starts making moves. Control is not just about discipline. It is about dominance over yourself, over your mind, over your life.